Welcome to Hyphenated. Here we talk about all things yarn and knitting. I'm Gabriella.
And I'm Jane, and today we are talking about your first visit to your LYS. What's an LYS, Gabriella?
Your local yarn shop.
Yee.
I'm glad I remembered what it was.
Good job. So for me, it was kind of intimidating to go to a local yarn store. Do you remember your first experience visiting a yarn store?
I think I don't remember if not the exact first experience, but the first few experiences, most likely like that era and where I went to. It's still local. I'm still in the same place. So yeah, I remember the shop. Yeah, I was overwhelmed. How about you?
Overwhelming, right? Yeah. I think for me, because I was not somebody who would go into any sort of small boutique type of store of any genre. And, that is the class of store that a yarn store usually is. So, I wasn't used to having somebody, really even, greet me upon going into the store. I'm much more used to being, an anonymous shopper like you are at a grocery store or, a big chain store or whatever. So just that, I think, in and of itself was intimidating. And then, maybe feeling like I'm going to be watched or, have pressure on me while I'm trying to, look at the yarns or, make decisions about relatively expensive
things. Like a hard sell or something?
I guess so. I guess I feel like... I don't know. My mom totally told me the same thing. She was like, oh, you can't, go into that kind of store without buying something. So I felt like there was this expectation that you, have to... If you walk in there, you, better buy something, even if you don't even find what you want or something like that.
Right.
Maybe a lot of that's just my own hang up or how I was raised or whatever. But I feel like also having worked in stores, I don't think it's totally uncommon or out of the ordinary to have that kind of experience. So for this video, I wanted to kind of give viewers a perspective from a employee or yarn store perspective of things that you could do to, if you are feeling intimidated, to feel less intimidated, and also ways that you can help the employees help you find what you want.
Right. Maybe some things to know also,
yeah,
right?
Totally.
And, but I think there is that idea of having been on both sides of the fence as a client, as a prospective shopper, beginner knitter for me when I was first starting, and then being on the whole other side as somebody who, sales, right? And lessons, but even then when you're putting a class together or doing, that's sales too. So yeah, it is a retail shop. So
for sure.
What do you think are some of the things that would help, or tips, or
Well, first I want to talk about maybe what are the advantages of going to a yarn store versus just trying to order yarn online or go to a Michael's or Joann's or Walmart or big kind of no-name store. Not no-name, no face store. What am I trying to say? A big box store.
Big box.
So the first thing I think is the service. You're gonna get employees who are, and the store owner presumably, who are knowledgeable about the craft, knowledgeable about the yarns, knowledgeable about their inventory, what they stock. Whereas usually, at a Michael's or Joann's, they're general craft stores, so they're not gonna. Most employees probably won't have in-depth knowledge about
this particular
yarn necessarily.
Right. This is an art kind of form. It has specific techniques, and there's a lot of knowledge that goes along with it that is specific to knitting and crocheting and weaving, whatever it is that you do with fiber arts, let's say.
Yeah.
Definitely. You're going to find that in a shop. You most likely won't really find as specialized help that in a big box store.
Yeah. And along with that, specialized classes, instruction in, more advanced techniques. I do think some of the Michaels and Joann's do offer like probably basic knitting
Do they?
classes sometimes. I see signs posted sometimes. I go to those stores pretty regularly. I just think it's fun to look at all the craft stuff anyway.
Right.
But they're not going to have like even intermediate level technique classes, let alone like advanced techniques. And they're also not going to have the depth and or range of supplies and yarns. They might actually, I would say they do have a pretty good variety.
Big range and variety of, well, especially if you go to like a Michael's. Michael's has a whole section of just yarn,
And Joann's too.
Joann's.
Yeah, if you go to like a
Joann's,
bigger
like
one.
a fabric store and stuff like that, they do have a lot of that.
But the accessories and like tools and those kinds of things you probably won't be able to find as much.
Right.
Like I feel like the needle section's often like depleted. Like they don't even have like every size needle.
Right. And it's a lot to stock. On the other hand, too, you may not have the range of, and it depends on what you're looking for, but I tend to look for more natural fibers.
Right.
And a lot of the times in the bigger box stores, you find things that are, synthetic. And that makes great for things that you may want to wash, or dry or something like that. But that's not generally what I'm going to be looking for.
Yeah, so different types of yarn. If you want more higher end yarns or specialty yarns, you'll probably want to go to a local yarn store to find that. And also like the hand-dyed yarn.
Well, that's always fun. Although I don't knit a lot with it, right now, it is still beautiful stuff. I mean, there's a whole art form just with that. Hand-dyed yarns.
So when I was living in China and I started to knit, and then my first visit back home, I went into a local yarn store. It was one of my first visits to a yarn store, and I saw this skein of Madeline Tosh.
Oh my gosh,
and
beautiful yarn.
At that time, I think the skein was around $20, maybe a little bit over $20. And I was like, oh my God, that's so much money to spend on a skein of yarn. And I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. And I went back to China and spent the whole next year thinking about that skein of yarn. Because the color was just so...
Do you still think about it?
No. But I think about that incident because it was just this beautiful teal color with so much like layering and depth of color. And I kicked myself like for the next year, like, why didn't I just spend the $20? Like, I would have spent that much for like a hat that's made out of wool, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And also, like, if we think about it this day and age with, like, how many coffees is that? Or how many, like, other, like, if you really break it down, like, how many does that, right?
I mean, there's other factors, like, I've gotten older, I've gotten, better paying jobs, I now live in a much higher cost of living area, so everything is just more expensive, so $20 doesn't seem like as much money, but at the time, compared to what I was spending on yarn, it was a lot.
To come up.
Hi, Lucy. Lucy wants to talk about Madeline Tosh yarns with us.
Okay, so were you intimidated the first time you went to a yarn shop?
Totally, yeah, because usually they're really small and you definitely feel like, you're just being watched, and I get that, like, freeze, like, I just want to, like, look but not be looked at. I want to, like, look at the yarn without somebody looking at me. I want to, I
want to feel pressured.
Yeah.
You know, and not even that anybody's pressuring you, but to feel the pressure.
Yes. Yeah, I had to learn to let go of that pressure.
Okay, but being like on the whole other side of the spectrum, like from a employee point of view, like I remember our job was to make sure that the customer knew we were there to help you, right? And to check in on them.
Yeah.
From time to time. And I think sometimes, maybe back in the day, like I didn't realize that's what they just wanted to help. And yeah, to make a sale, but sure, but also to make sure that you didn't feel, ignored, or that you didn't feel like you were not being taken care of or acknowledged even, right? Like one of the biggest things working at the last few yarn shops is make sure that you acknowledge the person who comes in, and make sure you say hi, and make sure that you check in with them over to see if they need any help. And sometimes that can feel like pressure. I think sometimes if you're not, depending on the person, right?
Yeah, and I definitely, as an employee at a store, had customers, who would definitely try to deflect me, like, oh, I don't need any help, I don't need any help. And I would, give them space. But a lot of the times it's also just about striking up a more natural conversation with them.
Yeah.
About what you're working on, about, things that it doesn't necessarily have to be about, like, buy this yarn. This is the yarn I want to buy, like, it doesn't have to be so much of a transaction.
No.
You can just be making a human connection about, the craft, the hobby that you enjoy.
Right. A mutual hobby, right? I mean,
yeah.
Right, and a mutual interest. What are some of the, do you think there were certain things that you might have helped you?
I think just realizing that, like, you don't have to buy something if you're looking for something in particular. Like, if you're very specific about something you want, like, I want this yarn in this color, and they don't have it, like, you don't have to settle for that.
Yeah.
For something that something that you don't want, that isn't exactly the same thing that you wanted.
Right.
I think knowing those things is helpful, because, a lot of times a store will suggest, like, an alternate. Now, it's a different case if you're like, oh, I want to make this thing. Do you have a yarn that would work for it?
Well, here's the thing, too. I think that, as a newer knitter, you may have an idea of something you want to make, but not have a pattern.
Right.
Hopefully the store will be able to help you find a pattern. Maybe they even have a pattern for that.
Yeah.
But also that they can then direct you towards the different yarns that would work for that particular type of item. Like, something that is, like a big chunky heavy yarn is going to be great for a hat or a sweater, but may not be great for a shawl. Like, it's not going to have the drape that you're going to want for something that you can wrap around, right?
Right.
So they will be able to help you with that. And also, if you do have a pattern or something that you want to make that there is a pattern for, and maybe that yarn shop doesn't have the exact same brand of yarn, there are many, many substitutions, and they'll be able to help you find a substitution. But like you said, if it doesn't work for you, don't in any way settle. Yeah. Because I think that, like, there have been times when I bought something that, the substitution, worked, but it wasn't the right color, or it, or there's other times that I've tried to make something work because I didn't have the knowledge, and I just, the yarn employee, I remember, helped me and showed me what would work, right? So it was something for a cute little short sleeve sweater, and they showed me the things that would work, and because I was so hooked on color, I went for a yarn that was completely inappropriate because the color is what I wanted. And I knit the whole sweater, and it didn't turn out well because the fiber didn't have kind of the substance that it needed to have in order for that sweater to work. So I should have listened, and at the same time maybe even waited until they got something in that suited my choices, and gone for an alternate project in the meantime.
Yeah. And I think that also, it's okay if you're not knowledgeable about the yarns or knitting or whatever. That's what the store employees are there to help you with. I remember there were some customers that would come in and say, like, be very apologetic for their lack of knowledge. And I'm like, why are you apologizing that you, like, don't know everything about knitting? Like, like, I can totally help you with this.
That's what we're there for.
Yeah. So, I think knowing, whatever level you're at, if you are a super beginner and you know nothing, that's fine. The store most likely will be happy to help you out.
Absolutely.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we hope so, right?
Yeah, that's kind of.
And hopefully you have more than, one shop in your area. I think in some cases there aren't shops in your area.
That's true,
in which case that means you do have to kind of go online and things like that. But if we are pretty fortunate enough to have several different shops, so that we have a not as many now, but in the beginning, I remember having a couple of really bad experiences going into a couple of different shops and just being like, oh my God, these people are mean, and so and I recently had one too, and I'm like, I don't know, I think I'm gonna spend the 20 extra minutes to go to the other shop now.
Yeah.
So there's that too. Like if you're not getting a good vibe, you don't have to shop there.
Totally true. Yes. I
hate to say it.
You can develop your preferences. Try whatever stores you can, because every store is going to have its own community, its own vibe, its own selection, very much dependent on probably the owner's like tastes in yarns and colors and everything. That's going to dictate the inventory of what they carry to a large extent. So.
Yeah, and some yarn shops may specialize. One of the yarn shops that I used to work at specialized in just natural fiber, so they didn't carry really hardly any sock yarn. We didn't carry a sock yarn because most of the time sock yarn has something to nylon in order to keep it to help it hold up and also to make it washable, right? So, but we didn't have anything that was. That wasn't natural, and so certain yarn shops will also have their niche,
right,
or their specialty,
right, and kind of certain projects or even certain brands that they are like a flagship store for, and they'll carry like a big range of that, or they might be the exclusive dealer in the area for that brand, for example, or they might. Like the store we worked at specialized a lot in sweater knitting, so stocking larger quantities for sweaters
huge blankets
and huge blankets, so chunkier yarn. So if somebody was coming in looking for a very fine yarn or to knit socks, like you said,
we really didn't have
much selection for that.
Right.
So depending on what you want to knit or the types of things you want to knit, different stores might better serve you than others.
And also, I think as a newer knitter, if you are a newer knitter, to try a whole bunch of different things. Like, just don't be afraid to try something, because then you'll get to learn what you actually like knitting and what you're actually going to continue to wear or use or get enjoyment out of. Some people I know just knit blankets. They don't ever want to do a sweater, never. But they love doing blankets, or they love doing throws, or they love doing shawls. Some people don't ever want to make a sweater because it has to fit, or maybe they don't feel comfortable, or in our climate it's warm.
Yep.
Right? So there isn't a lot of times that we get to wear sweaters. I mean, we're a little hot here, but I still make them.
Me too. I mean, this winter's been cold, so I've been wearing sweaters a lot.
Actually, we've been pretty fortunate to have a chilly winter.
So as an employee at a yarn store, what do you think customers could do to help you help them better?
I think that's a good question. I think not being afraid to say, I don't know this, but this is maybe having an idea of what you might want to make. But if you don't have an idea, asking for help coming up with something, not being afraid to ask for help. I think that that would be, that's always helpful because I'm happy to throw things and just see what sticks. And I think a lot of people are. But I think it's that, like you said, the apologetic, like, I don't know, so I'm afraid to ask because I don't know anything about knitting. But that's what really turned me on as an employee. Like, oh, well, let me tell you. You don't know, but I do. And I have some, like, tell me what you like. Tell me what colors you like. Or tell me what you like to wear. Or, and I would have so much fun coming up with with projects for people if they didn't know what they wanted to do.
Yeah, but I think you're right. Like any kind of starting point you can give. Like, I really love this color even. Like, even if you don't know what you want in it. Yeah. Like, even if you just look at the colors and be like, I am just drawn to that yarn. What could I make with it?
Right. That's anything.
A great way to start.
Yeah, yeah. Or if you have any kind of allergies, of course, that's always helpful. Fabric allergies, or if you want to make a gift for someone, that's also helpful. And just also being okay with, just telling us what kind of level you think you're at. And I think just getting into a conversation, communicating is really the best thing. And also, if you might even have a budget. That's what I was going to bring up. If you might have a budget.
Yeah, for instance, a lot of people would do their gift shopping for knitters, non-knitters coming into the yarn store around holiday time to buy gifts for their knitters in their lives. And it was always helpful since they, usually had no frame of reference if they just started with, this is how much I want to spend, and then we can do the rest and put together a good gift.
And we could put together something great, even if it wasn't a large amount of money, because there's all kinds of little knickknacks and cute fun things, and maybe one thing special and a whole bunch of little things. So yeah, I think a budget can be really helpful.
Even if it's for yourself, you're like, hey, I want to do... Now, obviously, your budget has to be somewhat realistic. You're not going to be able to knit a sweater probably for $10, but if you can just give an idea of what you're willing to spend on the project, and then the employee can either point you to the kinds of yarns that you'd be able to that would stay within that budget for that project, or
and don't forget about the tax. Seriously, because you can get a budget and then all of a sudden you have the tax and it's like completely thrown you off your budget. In California, we have a huge tax here,
close to 10%.
So that makes a big difference.
Out of state customers often would get thrown off when they were at the register.
They would be very surprised. So, and they're also, So, but I have called other shops on the phone that aren't in my area and asked them if they have a certain yarn, and they've sent it to me. I mean, you have to pay for shipping and stuff, but sometimes it's really worth it. If you know of a yarn and whatever, for some reason your local yarn shop doesn't have what you want, but you were able to feel it, you can always look around.
True. Yeah.
I mean, I would like to support my local yarn shop, but I have gone searching across the globe for the yarn I want.
Right. And, sometimes your store is willing to do that for you, to look.
That's right. We did it.
We would do that sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. We would go and find the yarn and have we'd get the yarn for them from another shop. That's true. I forgot.
Yeah. Other services that stores sometimes offer, like the store we worked at, had finishing services. So that means the seamings, all the ribs, trims on sweaters, blankets, edgings.
Weaving in ends. Oh my goodness. Excuse our peeper. He's very happy right now.
Yeah.
That's a very happy peeper. So what else?
So some stores offer that. Which sometimes surprises customers. but not every store will offer that. So, you know, but
That's
that is
another very
something you can
specialized,
ask about.
yeah, highly specialized skill as well. So, and it can, you know, if your store has it, it's really nice to, if you know, it can make or break a garment sometimes. So it is nice, although it's not, you know, it's not cheap because it's labor. So, and specialized labor, but it's a pretty cool. It's a pretty cool thing if the service, if they do have it.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add about visiting a yarn store?
Not that I can think of. Just, you know, if you have yarn stores in your area, more than one, check them out. It's fun. And don't feel pressured
Totally
or
fun.
obligated to buy anything. Just go in and check them out, you know?
But if you're
I
like
think,
me, it'll be hard to
oh,
say
it's going to be hard.
no.
I rarely walk out of the yarn store without something. It's really, really hard. It's like walking into a candy shop and not being able to grab something. So,
At least one skein just to try it.
Just to
I
try
haven't
it.
heard of this company
I
or
know,
this
I always
dyer. Oh,
buy
this color is
something,
so
right,
pretty.
Exactly.
And sometimes it's just, you know, it is nice to support a small shop if you can.
I always try to do that, yeah. And but again, the other cool thing, and here we are rambling on, but you get to know the people in the store, the employees and the shop, and it's fun. It ends up being a community where you know them, you know, by first name, and that can be a really cool experience as well, where they get to know your tastes. You get to know them. They remember your face. It's fun. It's really a nice experience.
It is a nice experience, and that's another thing. Also, if you are coming in regularly enough, you know, they will start to get to know your tastes, and when they get something new in, they might give you a heads up, like,
Right.
"Hey, we got this thing. Do you want kind of like first
Yeah,
dibs
we'll
while we
set it
have
aside
it?" You know,
for ya,
like I know
yeah.
you love this color or this brand or whatever. So
Right.
that's
Or
another
maybe
kinda-
even a new project came down that they thought you might really like. And oh, by the way, I just saw this new pattern or this new, you know, here's an idea. So it is actually a pretty nice feeling to be welcomed, you know, when they get to know you and stuff like that. I loved, you know, we had certain clients that were just our favorite clients that would come in that were so much fun to spend time with.
Yeah.
So that's a cool experience, I think.
Totally. For sure. All right. Let us know any questions you have in the comments below about visiting yarn stores, what it's like to work in a yarn store, things you're curious about yarn stores. We can do our best to answer them. And as always, if you're enjoying our videos, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.